So I recently received a comment from a new commenter, and their name is, forgive me if I get this wrong, is it appears to be like Philosoph 66. I think it's a play on the word philosopher. So Philosoph 66. So as I put this video down, it is a Monday, November 11, and it's right on 10:30 in the morning here on the New South Wales Central Coast. Yes, I'm sitting down here because this is just a testimony video. I was going to do it down at the park, but just the cicadas are absolutely relentless, and I know it would have been just too much to bear to listen back to it. So I thought I'd come back to the homestead and put this down. So the way this all went down was I heard from this Philosoph 66, and I've never heard from them before, and he just said he, she, I'm gonna probably say he, right? That's anyway. I am pleased to meet, and that's the thing. It's like whenever I hear from somebody I've never heard from before on BitChute, it's generally my feeling that they come in hostility, because that's generally how it plays out, right? So that's when I first saw this comment. I thought, oh no, here we go again, right? But no, how wrong was I? I'm pleased to meet someone with so much spiritual wisdom. God obviously thought you would do something with it. I thought, well, that's nice. What a wonderful comment to receive. So my response to it was, oh man, what a truly wonderful comment to awaken to this morning. Truth became my anchor on meeting my job, the Baptist, on that September 2016 day. The next 8 years have been dedicated to truth in all its forms. So, of course, that journey has led me to Christ, but it's also led me to doing these videos. We are all called according to his purpose. And then his response to that was, do you have a video describing what happened in 2016? Yeah, I reckon somewhere, but I'm not sure which one. It's something I've spoken about on videos as the videos have led, but I've never done one as a standalone dedicated to it before. Is this something you'd like to hear? And his response to that was, yes, I am interested. I was wondering what sort of encounter launched you into such a journey. Not that many people experience it. Now, the reason why I put down that backdrop here now, yeah, I just want to just establish it that this wasn't my plan. This wasn't even on my radar. Didn't even come into my mind to do this. I'm only doing this video now because this person, like, did they ask for it? I kind of led them, but my original comment was not, I meant nothing by it. I didn't put it down trying to lead him to say, can you please share your testimony? It was nothing like that. It's just, I haven't heard from this person before. You got to say something, and I wanted to, I don't know, just give them a little bit of a backdrop, and that's where it's led. Yeah, yes, I was the one that said, would you like to hear it? But I'm thinking that person may have been thinking, well, I'm not going to ask this person just to do a standalone video just for me, right? So that's sort of why that's why I'm here. Well, I'm currently working on another video over there on the computer, right? So I've diverted this, and please know that it's an absolute delight to do it, but also know that you know what I'm trying to say, right? So I've been thinking about how I'm going to do this. So this is going to be a standalone video dedicated to what happened in 2016 to me. So most people who I'm blessed enough to have watch my videos, you've probably heard it all before. There could be a couple of details here and there that I haven't shared before, but this is just going to be a standalone. And on that, what happened in 2016. And I've been thinking about sort of as well, like how far back do I go? How far forward do I go after 2016? How much of a backdrop do I give and all that? And I think I've landed on those things, and I'll start like this, right? So my name is Brett. I am 51 years old, and I reside on the New South Wales Central Coast. So where I'm at, it's about halfway between Sydney and Newcastle. A little bit closer to Newcastle than Sydney, a little bit further north than halfway, right? Now this is where I've been born and bred, as they say. I was born down in Royal North Shore Hospital down in St Leonard's in Sydney. But when I was about 9 months old, my parents moved us all up here to the New South Wales Central Coast. So I'm a local boy. But back in 2007, due to circumstances, and I won't go that far back, but basically in 2007, I moved to Queensland. I moved to the Gold Coast first, and then I moved to Brisbane after about 18 months of that. I've got two kids, and they're twins, and they're 26 years old, and we're estranged. I haven't spoken to them in 10 years, one, and the other one would have been 2017. So that's about 7 years. The other, they're estranged. They're very, very complicated what happened, and their mother and all that, and I'm the bad guy and all the rest of it, right? Because I did, when they were 8 years old, I did go to Queensland. But the reason why is something that none of them are interested in. But that's neither here nor there. The other thing too that I want to be completely open about on this video, because I am open about this, I come out of the closet when I was 29 years old on April 10, 2003, some 21 years ago now. So the way it happened was I moved to Brisbane, and I moved to the Gold Coast due to circumstances, and I was with somebody then. I was with my partner then. And then after about 18 months, we broke up. I scored a job at Telstra on the Gold Coast working in a call centre. And then me and the partner, we broke up. So then I was let loose and I went to Brisbane out on my own, and I got a job up there. I'll just say I transferred up there, but it was a lot more to the story than that. But I stayed at Telstra in the end. I was still at Telstra. I left and went back, but I got a job due to my team leader at the time and all that. But I'll just try and stay on track as best I can. And I was an agent in Telstra Business up in Brisbane. Now, the way it all worked in Brisbane, now, I went to Brisbane and I have not regretted it for a minute. It just carnally speaking, it made me the man, partly made me the man that I am today. It set me up in good stead. It taught me a lot about myself, and it gave me a lot of self-worth and also self-confidence just with the things that I achieved up there, just all by myself, right? Out in the big wide world, all by myself, right? So this is the thing with this video, how far back do I go? How much context do I give it, right? I've got to share these things because there's a man that's critical to this story. Now, I've decided today to use names. I've never used these names before, but I've been thinking about it. This man that I call John the Baptist, his name is Danik, and I've been thinking about it, and I think, well, if I was to talk to Danik now, would he be happy that I'm using his name? I would have thought he would be, because everything that I talk about Danik here today is going to be in glowing terms. So that's my John the Baptist. His name is Danik, and then also I'm going to talk about other people that played a role in this. And I'm just going to name names as well, because it's so much easier to not that I want to name and shame and give credit and all that. It's just so much easier to tell the story, and it's so much easier just to give context about sort of what I'm talking about here, you know. And I don't have to come anyway. So I'm gonna name names. So the way it works in Brisbane is that I work at a call centre in the middle of the city in Brisbane on Ann Street, up near the river it was. Now, this building was about, I don't know, it was, going on memory, it was around about 15 stories high. And I reckon, I don't know, in its heyday, in its zenith, those call centres, I reckon there would have been up to, I don't know, maybe even a half a dozen call centres, one on top of the other. Some of them were like dual story, so there was 2 levels to one call centre. Big, thriving call centres where literally hundreds into the thousands of people were employed. It was a wonderful place to work. I loved my time at Telstra. It's had its challenges, of course, working for a great big, I guess that's a multinational corporation, the biggest telco in Australia, bar none. It used to be the government utility back in the day. And it was the most amazing place to work, right? I developed an enormous amount of relationships, quality relationships back in the day. And my Telstra journey, there's absolutely no way in the world I'd go back and change a thing about it. And I do not regret going to Brisbane unto this day. Something that really, really annoys my daughters unto this day. In any case, I was working in a call centre called Telstra Business. This is going to be so hard to put this down today because there's parts of this story that I'm going to forget and have to come back to and all that, but we'll just see how we go. Whether I sit back down here later and add to it as I go, I don't know. I've just got to try and focus, and I've just got to try and stay on track. I'm sitting here now, my computer's off. I have no run sheet. I'm just shooting straight from the hip, and I'm just relying purely on memory. I'm not planning on using any scriptures at all here today either. This is just going to be a standalone video. I'm going to reference them probably. This is just going to be a standalone video where it's just my testimony video of what happened in 2016. So around about 2000 and I think it was 14, maybe in the end of 13, I got appointed to become a team leader at Telstra. That's another story in itself as well. And I did it the hard way. And I became an appointed team leader. So what that meant was that I was no longer employed as an agent. I was now employed as a team leader. And I could never, ever go backwards. It's not possible at Telstra that you get demoted. It doesn't work like that, right? So I was now band 3 and I was now an appointed team leader. I got a whole heap of extra money, whole heap of extra responsibilities, and a whole heap of extra status as well. New friends, new circle of trust. It was a real step up for me, like work-wise and also socially, but also like mentally, and it turns out spiritually as well, because you're meeting, like on the whole, you're meeting a higher quality of person. Like they're not a team leader for nothing, right? In any case, I got appointed and I was working in small business and things were going really, really well. But it turns out, and the other thing too is I've been thinking about how am I going to tell this story? Do I tell it like I'm carnal or do I tell it like I'm spiritual looking back at it? It's going to be a bit of both, I think. So back in 2000, because using terms like lucky and all that, where in the end, I just knew it was all God's grace and it was all my journey that has led me to this point now where I'm sitting here talking into my phone in my lounge room in this little place that I still can't get my head around that I love so much, because if you had told me 10 years ago I was living in a place like this, I would have hit the roof, because I was flying back in those days. And I was. Back in 2014, I was living in Paddington. It was a 2-bedroom unit. It was a wonderful little place and things were good. Back in those days, I was very popular. I had a big circle of friends. I had a good circle of trust. I was respected and things were going well, but this alcohol habit just boiled on the side there. And also, due to coming out of the closet in 2003, I never had a youth. I never got to go to nightclubs and do all that. And I did all that in those years. Around 2005 was my big year down in the scene, down on Oxford Street. But I developed this real liking for what they say, like the recreational drugs. I loved my ecstasy and all that. And I developed a pot smoking habit as well, which I kept generally. I kept that within an arm's length. I controlled it rather than it controlled me, but it didn't end up like that with weed, right? So all of these things are they're boiling away on the side, right? In any case, 2014, I'm flying. I've become an appointed team leader, and it turns out I was very, very lucky in my timing with being appointed, because pretty much from that moment, that call centre started to descend. And when you're at Telstra, when you work in call centres like I did, you know when your centre's going to be closed. You can feel it, you can see it. They don't recruit anybody. They continue to deny it. The centre manager and the GMs and the middle management and all that, they continue to deny it. But you can see that it's happening because they don't recruit. It's just getting less and less and less. And in the end, I ended up with a team of 4. Now, going back, before I was appointed, there was my centre manager at the time. His name was Brian. And I had an interesting relationship with Brian. But in any case, generally, it was pretty good. And there will be pauses because of my throat. So my relationship with Brian generally was pretty good. In any case, just out of nowhere, to this day, I can't explain it. It never happened to me before. It never happened to me since. But Brian swapped being a centre manager with the centre manager from the call centre below us for 6 months. Nobody explained it. They just did it. And it never happened before and it never happened since. It was just bizarre. But the man that came up, he was from the Telstra Sign business. So like I was in small business. This is like a larger business call centre. And that man's name was Danik. Now, Danik's the man that I call my John the Baptist. Now, for me, Danik was a breath of fresh air because I look back and for me, Brian wasn't a centre manager. He was a good team leader, but he wasn't a centre manager. He should never have been placed in that role. I don't know why they did it. He was the wrong man for the job. In any case, and he was the only centre manager I served under. In any case, this would be, I don't know, 2015 maybe back to 2014 actually before I was appointed. So it's still quite a long way before all this started for me. But this is all the backdrop I've got. This is essential to this story, right? All this is essential to the story. Now, that man's name was Danik. Now, that man, Danik, was a real breath of fresh air for me because he was a pro. He was a natural centre manager and I could see that he was potentially going to go places as well. He was going to be potentially a GM and all that. Not a Freemason. I'm absolutely convinced he wasn't a Freemason. He was just a normal dude, but he was a cut above. Now, Danik was well respected. His time was keenly sought after. And he's somebody that I instantly had it wasn't a gay thing. It wasn't, I didn't hold a flame or anything like that. It was nothing like that. But I loved this man. I thought, wow, I really, really want to impress this man. I really, really like this man, you know. And we had a funny relationship because I was a raw team leader back then, and back then I would have been very difficult to handle. I wasn't appointed in these days. I was still acting, so I was an agent who was standing up in the role. And he managed me going back. He managed me really, really well. In any case, after I got appointed and the centre I was working at, small business, the one, Brian was back, Danik was back down in assigned and all that. A couple of years later, after I got appointed, it all started to deteriorate my centre. Now, I started like the standard for a team size is 15 agents per team leader. I ended up with 4, and in the end it became embarrassing, and the agents would make comments and all that sort of stuff, and I'm thinking, I got to get out of this centre. I don't want to be made redundant. I've got to get on the front foot. I've got to get out of this centre. But the trouble I had in those days was that my main mentor, his name was John. He was my first team leader back down on the Gold Coast in 2007 when I first got the job. My first team leader was this man named John. Now, when I left the business on the Gold Coast, one of the stupidest things that I've done, I was just walking around a shopping centre one day where I was working in another place, and I just run into John. And John said, "What are you doing?" I said, "I'm miserable. I'm working in this place and I hate it." He said, "You should never have left." I said, "No, I shouldn't have." And he said, "Well, I got good news." He said, "We've been closed, as you know. I'd heard that the Gold Coast Centre got closed and they all got made redundant, and I stupidly quit before it all happened." And he said, "I'm not taking the redundancy." He said, "I'm going to transfer up to Brisbane." And he said, "They're recruiting." He said, "I want you to apply." And he said, "If you do apply," he said, "I guarantee you, I'll get you in." I said, "Wow, thanks, dude." And he did. John was my mentor. I loved John. I absolutely love John. But when I got seconded to the Philippines in 2011 to help open a call centre over there. And while I was over there, John died. John died on a motorcycle, in a motorcycle accident. John being John, he was trying to win over the centre manager at the time, and they went out motorbiking on the weekend, and John went and got himself killed, right? So in any case, back in these days, my main mentor, John, was gone. Now, my other mentor was a guy named Lloyd. He was my next team leader after John. He was my first team leader when I went up to Telstra Business in Brisbane. And Lloyd took me under his wing as well. But the problem is Lloyd had left the centre, and it was very, very hard to raise Lloyd because he was going places. He was a career man, Lloyd, and he was very, very difficult to get. And I just got the impression that Lloyd just wanted to be left alone. So I had no one to talk to. I had no mentors at the time. And I'm sitting there one day at my desk and I'm thinking to myself, I need some career advice, man. I'm languishing here. I can see this centre's going to close and I just need somebody to talk to. And I'm sitting there at my desk and I'm just racking my brain. Who do I trust? Who's somebody that I value? Who's somebody that I respect in this business? And I went, Danik. I'm going to hit up Danik. So back in, like, there was an what's it called? Remember the old MSN on the computer? This was just like that. It's an international, it's a inner business comms. Everybody's got one. Everybody in the business, even the CEO. All you have to do is put in their ID number and hit them up, and you just send them a message, right? Whether they come, it's like an instant messenger service. It was terrific. We all used to communicate with each other on it. I think that's what it was called. Actually, it was just called Communicator. Anyway, I'll call it that for the sake of this story. I've been out of Telstra now for 7 years, so I'm a bit sort of lingo now. But anyway, I'm just sitting there at my desk and I just hit Danik up. I said, "G'day, Danik." And he's like, "Brett, long time no hear." He said, "Wow." He said, "It's good to hear from you, mate." He said, "What can I do for you?" I said, I was hoping for some career advice. And he said, "Really? From me?" And I said, "Yeah." I said, "I think you're just the man." And he said, "Great." He said, "I'm flattered." He said, how about we go down and get a coffee?" I said, "Mate, I'd absolutely love to." I said, "When are you free?" He said, "What about right now?" I said, "Yeah, I'd absolutely love to." So I shared with Danik my plight, how I was feeling, right? And Danik looked at me after we'd been speaking for about 20 minutes. He looked at me and he says, "Are you asking me for a job?" And I said, no, mate, no. I said, that wasn't my intent at all. I said, I'm here just to get some career advice. I said, "But now you mention it, do you have one?" And he said, "Yeah, I do." I said, "You're joking." He said, "No." He said, "One of my main team leaders, she's just retired over the last week, and he says we're currently in the process of replacing her." And he said, "I reckon you'd be ideal." I said, "No way." He said, "Yeah, way." And it was all put through. It was all stamped. And I was put into this huge call centre that had over 200 agents. It was 2 floors. And I was back. I was back in a team with 15 agents. And I was back. And Danik was my centre manager. And I'm flying. I'm getting goosebumps thinking about it now, right? I was back, baby. And Danik is my centre manager. And it was just such a wonderful period. I was right over the other side of the centre, away from Danik. I hardly spoke to Danik at all when I was a team leader. After about 18 months working there, I got stale. I got bored in the role. And I went to Danik and I said, "Mate, I'm just thinking about my next career move." I said, "I wouldn't mind doing something else." And he said, "Well, what do you got in mind?" And I said, "Operations." He went, "Really?" And I said, "Yeah." I said, "It's always fascinated me." So this is like rostering and all that sort of stuff and analysing call queues and numbers and Excel and all that sort of stuff, right? Rostering RDOs and all that sort of stuff. Basically, it's like you're the hub of the centre. work in the business so the centre manager can work on the business, right? Every centre manager needs a good ops lead. And he said, I love it. I said, really? And he said, I absolutely love it. So I got appointed to that role. Now, the way it all worked was that I faced this way. My computer was like that. And think Danik is that wall. So Danik was sitting right behind me. So if I'm recording now, Danik's head would have been like right there, right? He was literally right there. It was like 2 meters. And it was terrific because we had a wonderful, wonderful relationship where we were just completely open with each other, you know. He'd say things to me. He said, what'd you do that for? Are you completely off your head today? Have you stopped drinking yet? He would say things like that to me. He was wonderful, absolutely wonderful. And then I can do it back. He'd say, what did you do it like that for? And I said, well, because if I had done it the other way, you would then ask me why I did it that way. I said, I had to do it one of the two ways. And I just look at him and sometimes and I go, I think you're here to drive me mental. And he'd like, how am I going? And we had the best relationship and we ended up sort of, it started to form into a way where we actually became friends, me and this guy. In any case, I was always sort of like into like space and the planets and all that. And I used to talk to him about these things. Why are we here? How did we get here? I had a theory with the Earth. My theory was the sun just spat out all the planets, and Mercury was a fail because it was too close to the sun. And then Venus was pretty close, but it wasn't quite. And then the Earth, the sun got it just right. And then Mars went a little bit too far. And then the other ones were just absolute disasters, went too far, right? But the Earth, the sun got it just right. And I'm telling him that theory one day. And he looked at me and he says, nonsense. He said, absolute nonsense. That's not what happened. And I used to think too, another theory that I come up with once, I used to think that Mars was actually the Earth after a nuclear holocaust, right? All these things that I had in my head. In any case, I remember one day I was talking. I feel like I've missed something out, but anyway, I'll just plow on. I haven't. I was talking one day about the moon landing. And he just looked at me and he said, so this now is 2016, by the way. We are now in September 2016. So I've been the ops lead now since Christmas. I got the job at Christmas 2015. So I'd been Danik's ops lead for about 9 months. And just to give a bit of extra context too, what was going on in my life in 2016, at the end, on Christmas Day, I broke up, me and my partner broke up. This is another one. So I was with this guy I'm not going to name names when it comes to the partners, but 2011, I hooked up with this guy just after I got back from the Philippines, and we broke up 5 years later on Christmas Day 2016. That was the end. This is after all that. And 2016 was also the year I stopped paying child support, which was just a liberating time indeed. I don't think anything's ever made me so happy. That day, it was my birthday in 2016, my 43rd birthday, where I stopped paying child support. I don't think anything has ever made me so happy. It was just, I hated it, absolutely hated it, resented it because of what she did and my relationship with the girls and everything that happened and the government. And I just hated it, right? And it was like paying tax twice, and you know, you just get sick of women saying you chose to put your willy in, you know, and it's like, no, I also agreed to a contract with that woman that we were going to raise a family together, you know, and she reneged on it. Yeah, but you're gay. It doesn't matter. I would still be there in any case, right? I was absolutely delighted. So that's the backdrop. But my drinking on the side too is starting to get a little bit out of control. Just with my drinking, I got arrested in 2012 for being too drunk and not leaving premises, and that's when my tooth got. It was the police. They punched me in the face. I went to court. Almost got a criminal record, And then it went and happened again around 2015. I went and got and just spent single nights in the watch house, right? So things are starting to go off their head with my drinking. I still like to party. My pot's starting to get out of control, and I'm still out and about taking ecstasies, right? And then when me and the ex broke up at the end of 2016, yeah, it was party on. Like, talk about letting me loose out in the right out in the community. So that's sort of the backdrop with where I'm at in 2016. But the career's going great, you know. Good circle of friends socially and at work, good network, good circle of trust. Danik's my centre manager, and everything's going really, really well, right? But on this day, I just started talking about the moon landing. And Danik said, the moon landing's a hoax. And I looked at him and I said, you're not one of these lunatics, are you? And he said, what do you mean? I said, come on, we all know that's rubbish. Like we all used to hear it, don't we? All that, you know, all of that noise that we heard about the moon landing, and it's a hoax and all that sort of stuff, and the anti-demon juices and all that. I used to look at the anti-demon juices and I used to just think that they were just attention seekers, and I used to think, just get it done. What's the problem? Why do you seek all this attention? No, it's because they knew what was going on, right? So we all heard the noise. And I said, come on, man. And he said, all right. He said, if I gave you a book, he said, would you read it? And I said, I hate reading, you know that. I said, you know, I'm not a cultured soul. I'm from the New South Wales Central Coast. We don't do culture there, right? And he said, would you read the book? Now, this is where it's critical. Right? So you think about how me and Danik met, Brian and him swapping just randomly, and then my call centre deteriorates. I've got nobody I can trust in the business, so I had to go to Danik, and Danik gives me a job, and there I am working now with Danik, and he is sitting right behind me. Right now, there was not one other person in my life at that time that even came close to the respect I held for Danik. I craved Danik's attention, and it wasn't like that. It was just, I just loved this bloke who he was. A little bit like what I am now with Alex, right? Me and Alex now have become like best mates, right? I crave his attention as I assume he does mine. And I crave this man's attention. And a couple of times, I remember, never forget the first time he invited me out for drinks with his team. I'm like, wow, right? Because I'm now a part of his team. I'm out on the piss now with Danik. Just highlights, right? Absolute highlights. There is not one other man on the face of the earth I would have read that book for. I read it because Danik asked me to read it, and I was flattered. So I read it. A couple of days later, he said to me, have you read the book? And I said, I've read the book. He said, what, already? I said, yes. I pretty much read that book within a night. It was just, the book's called Wagging the Moon Doggy by a fellow by the name of David McGowan. And that book, I'll never forget that book. I'm pretty sure I read it online. Yeah, I did. Otherwise, I'd still have it. I read it online. And Wagging the Moon Doggy by David McGowan. And it was like about 132 pages from memory. I know it's an exact number, but that's just the number I recall. 132 pages of, and I said to him, I said to Danik, I said, mate, that is just a 132 page rant of somebody saying why they believe what they do. And he said, do you believe him? And I said, I'll put it this way. I said, if anybody reads that book and still thinks man went to the moon, they've absolutely got rocks in their head. And he went, good boy. Now you're starting to see it. I said, yeah. Yeah, now I'm starting to see it. What convinced me when I read that book, the gloves and all the rest of it, what convinced me was just the distance. The distance. And yet you try and, the globe heads and the globe proponents and all that, you try and get them to explain it to you, and it's just gravity, right? Gravity just gets the spacecraft and the moon just sucks it in and like flings it to the moon, you know. And then we're at the moon, and we all know it. That ridiculous footage of how they left. How was the camera there when they landed? The whole thing, you look back, and there's this it's up now. It's up now if I can find it. Just this video about just how ridiculous this is, and if you believe man went to the moon, you believe what's up on screen right now, right? That's if I can find it. So there it was. So at the time, I moved out of Paddington and I was now living at a place called Toowong, my final house at Brisbane. Now, I wrestled with this. I wrestled with this inside, man going to the moon. There was days where I was convinced that it was a hoax, and then there was other days where I'd convinced myself that man went to the moon and there was nothing for me to consider. Now, those days were the days where I felt most functional in my life, in my role at work, when I'd convinced myself that man didn't go to the moon. In my heart of hearts, me, whoever that is, whatever that means, I did not want it to be a hoax. I wanted the whole thing to go away. But there was another feeling gnawing away at me, which just wouldn't let me let it go. Now, it's that feeling that I really want discernment of to this day. What was that feeling? Was that the Spirit of God? Am I different to other people? Is that why I accepted the truth, because I had this feeling? Or does everybody have it, but some choose to side with it and listen to that feeling, listen to that voice, and others don't? Where I sit with it right now is that it's the Spirit of God, and this is how grace is taught and preached to every man and everybody. This is why, one of the many reasons why I'm absolutely adamant, and I will use that word in all its forms. I am absolutely adamant that repentance is a choice, and everybody that ever has lived has the opportunity to repent. Everybody that comes into this world are here to bear the light, and everybody has that opportunity to repent. And Jesus is clear about this, I think, in Luke 8, where everybody hears the word, but it's just about how you receive that word. I received it. And I remember it was a rainy day. I stood under, and I used to walk to work. I stood under the William Jolly Bridge. It was a yellow old bridge at Brisbane. And I stood under it, and I was walking to work, and I just said to myself out aloud, I said, that's it, Brett. Man went to the moon. We're doing this. We're doing it. Man went to the moon. And I've never looked back. And this is why I say in my videos, truth became my anchor that day. And that stays the case to this very day. Truth became my anchor that September day, 2016. This went on for weeks. It went on and on for weeks. Me trying to reconcile whether man went to the moon or not. I'd go to and fro, and then that morning under the William Jolly Bridge, I made my final choice, and I've never looked back, and truth became my anchor that day. Now, this is one of the many reasons as well why I say all the time, if you want the truth, you will come to Christ, and if you don't come to Christ, it means you don't want the truth. Because I'm living, breathing proof of that. I didn't just wake up one day and just say, I'm gonna follow Jesus now, because people have been telling me he's the truth. It used to drive me crazy. Like Danik used to take me to churches and to listen to I didn't want the church at all. No way. I still hated God in these days. When I reconciled the moon landing was hoax, I was a long way from professing Christ. Long way. I still hated God with a passion, right? But Danik used to take me to churches because there'd be people speaking about flat earth and things like that. And Danik was very, very interested in the conspiracies. Danik was the man that woke me up. That's why I called Danik my John the Baptist. You see why this man's my John the Baptist. And he was the one that taught me all the conspiracies, right? In any case, I remember I spoke to Danik about it. I said, yeah, I'm down, mate. I said, I'm down. Man never went to the moon. And he's like, great. He said, how do you feel about it? I said, well, it is what it is. You know, I never felt sort of, how do I say? I think a lot of people don't repent. They won't see the truth. because they just can't bear the fact that they've been lied to. It might be ego. It might be a few things. It could be anything. Why people they just can't admit that they've been lied to by this world. And to me, that was never a problem. To this day, it doesn't bother me that I was lied to and I fell for it. Doesn't bother me. Never has done. So whether that's grace or not, I don't know. Why does that make me different to anyone else? And this is the thing. I had plenty of skin in the game. I had plenty to lose. Like I was on like $75,000 a year as a single man in Brisbane. I was flying. I was saving money hand over fist. I was the centre ops manager for one of the biggest centres in Brisbane, working for Danik, and things were great. I was flying, man. I had a lot of skin in this game, but now truth became my anchor. I never said it, but looking back, that's exactly what happened. Truth became my anchor that day. And I remember Danik said to me one day, he said, all right, he said, you ready for the next one? I said, bring it. He said, the earth's flat. And I said, oh, here we go. And I, like everyone else, I rejected it. And I said, you're mad, mate, come on. And he said, I wasn't mad with the moon landing hoax, he said. I said, all right. He said, beer, Friday. I said, all right, yes, right. Danik's taken me for beer. And this happened a few times. Danik took me for beers, just me and him. Anyway, we went to this place at Roma Street in Brisbane, and he comes in, and this man's got a flat earth map. And I said, people are going to see. He said, I don't care. What do you care? And this is what he was like, He was just like, I don't care. What do you care? And he wasn't confrontational or nothing like that. I used to call Danik a jigsaw puzzle. But he got out this map, and I'm like, yeah, okay, all right. And then I was away. I hit YouTube. I started watching all the conspiracies, and I was absolutely in love with Jeranism back in those days. And that's where I went. Endless videos on YouTube about flat earth and the moon landing hoax. It went on and on, right? And then Danik said, you ready for the next one? I said, yeah, I'm ready for the next one. The Ella hoax is not real. And I looked at him, and this is at work. He said it quiet. Is that one shameful, right? And I looked at him and I said, now you've crossed the line. And he said, I hadn't the last two times. He says, why do you doubt me now? So off I went. Went and researched it. Went and looked into it. And then the two great towers, and one by one, it all started tumbling down. Late 2016, it was September all this happened, and by the end of the year, Danik announced that he was leaving the centre. And this just devastated me. When he'd left the centre, not because he'd left, I think he'd left because he knew. After he said to me, when I asked him why, he said, I no longer feel proud and privileged to work for Telstra. So something went down. He never told me, but something went down between Danik and the business. And Danik was going well. He was having acting stints as a general manager and all the rest of it, and he would have been very, very good in that role. He was a gun, an absolute gun. But he left the business, right? Now, when he left, a lady by the name of Kathy took it over, and Kathy hated me. I used to call it the Young Mothers Club. They all had babies. There was like this clique of about 4 of them, and they were young women, and they all had infants, and they hated me. And Kathy was number 1, and she got appointed, and I was rancid. I was so disappointed, and all of my world started crashing down. My world was already crashing down because of all these conspiracies. I wasn't angry. I I started to get angry when I first started learning about the Steinbergskis and their lies and their crimes. That's the one that made me angry, you know. And that's something to this day I've got to harness. I've just got to harness that vented up, you know, energy that I've got for those people. But it's all good. It's all, I in my heart of hearts, I know I don't hate them. Part of that is because it's contrary to the gospel, and that's not where my heart is. And also, what got me through back in those days was that's the plan. They want you to hate them. They feed off it, right? So I don't hate them. Not at all. But that's the one that they call conspiracy that really tested me, right? But I was very, very down and depressed about work now because it's Kathy there now. Kathy's sitting there behind me, and it's just all the magic's gone. So I set my mind to get a new job, and there was one in the NBN Centre. There was a job going for an ops lead in the NBN Centre. So this is the end of 2016. And around that time, Danik was working at another place. He was working at another place that anyway, he's working at another place, and we're still socialising, right? And he took me out one night, hit me up. He said, "You want to go for beer?" I said, "I want to go for beer." And it was mysterious. He took me out this night to tell me that he professes Jesus, that he's religious, you know. And I remember going home very, very puzzled, and I'm thinking, why did he just tell me that? It made no sense. He never told me why, but he told me that, right? And now it's completely obvious why, because he's sort of nudging me in that direction. But anyway, early 2017, I got a job in the NBN call centre, and it was great because when my old centre that I left, the small business one, when that eventually closed, because it did close, all the people that were left over, they went to NBN. So it was terrific because I was back working with all these people that I used to work with. You know, there was quite a few of them that were still there, and they were scattered around. And I met a whole heap of new people, and being the ops lead, you get to meet some incredible people, you know. And it was terrific. And the guy, the centre manager's name there was Christian, and I had a really good relationship with Christian. I respected Christian a lot, and things were good again. You know, like my career had taken off again, and things were really, really good again. And I'm still socialising with Danny. It's still happening, you know. I remember he took me up to Mount Tamboree. No, what was it called? Mount Cootha one day. And he showed me his P900, and he had this thermometer thing where he pointed at the sky and he pointed to the moon and the sun, and he'd show me that the moon's cold and all that sort of stuff. We had a couple of beers after it and all the rest of it, you know, looking at the moon through his P900 as it's set, as the sun's setting. Just wonderful memories, you know, absolutely terrific memories. But he's moved on. He's now working at another place. So I'm settling into the NBN role really, really well. And my career now, it's it's pretty well back on track. Anyway, I'm working away one day. This is about June, I guess. So I'd been doing the ops lead role in NBN for about 6 months. And my supervisor, it was complicated, the structure. My supervisor here wasn't the centre manager, even though I counted the centre manager as my job, because it was like I was outsourced from another part of the business to provide them the service. So he was like he was my boss, Christian, but he wasn't my one-up. My one-up's, his name was Troy. And Troy come down one day, and I respected Troy a lot. I had a history with Troy. He used to be a team leader back in the small business days as well. And he's now moving up in the business, a real career man, Troy. Anyway, Troy come down to me and he said, are you coming to the meeting? And I was hopeless with all this stuff, you know, Outlook meeting calls and all that. And I said, I haven't seen one, mate. And he said, it's in your calendar. He said, you're hopeless. Like, you got to do better at this. And I said, when is it? And he said, 15 minutes. I said, all right, no worries. So anyway, I thought nothing of it. Anyway, I walk into the room with Troy, and there's there was one person who I can't remember who it was, but it was also another lady by the name of Sally. Now, I knew who Sally was because Sally was right up in Telstra. She was upper middle management. She was right up there, right? And we all knew who Sally was. We'd see her on road shows where she'd be on stage, you know, given messages and all that and presentations, and I'd see a photo all the time in emails, you know. Everybody knew who Sally was. And I looked at her and I said, Sally, I didn't expect this. And she said, I sat down and she said, Brett, news like this is never easy to give. And I thought, they're going to make me redundant. And it's exactly what happened. They made me redundant. But there was a complication. Because it was such a big call centre, there was two ops leads. Now, at the time, there was no redundancies going on at all. Like, everything had quieted down. There was no redundancies going on because redundancies would come and go. Like my old centre, they all got made redundant. And the payouts are great. Anyway, the way they positioned it was, it's going to be either you or the other lady. So there was another lady who did my job on the other floor. Because it was such a big call centre, there was two of us. And those jobs were that complicated. Both of us had to have two ICs to help us with the volume of work. It was full on, these jobs. I gave no end of my own time just trying to stay on top of it with my 2IC. My 2IC was a cracking fella. His name was Dylan. He was unreal. He really got the role. At times he outshone me, you know. An absolutely cracking 2IC. No ego, nice young fella, you know. We got along really, really well, me and Dylan. I'll never forget him. Anyway, basically the way they positioned it. Now, at the time now, 2017, I've been with Telstra since 2007. So I'm like 10 years, you know. I've now become eligible for long service, the whole lot, you know. I've done and seen a heck of a lot of things in my time at Telstra, right? I estimated it one day, I'd worked in like 8 call centres, you know. And it's not because I went from one disaster to another. They were all moves for my own good, you know. And the highlight was definitely getting appointed as a team leader, but also the secondment to Manila. That was an amazing experience. You imagine being able to go to Manila for 6 months on work, you know, just incredible. And it was a really nice boost to the ego and also my self-worth. Anyway, the way they said it was that over the next month or so, you and her are gonna have to pitch to us which one we're gonna keep, and we're gonna make the decision. And I thought, this stinks. This doesn't feel right. After 10 years, it's all come down to this. And that hurt me, the thought that I had to do that. But also this lady, the other lady, she was a lot more senior in the role than what I was. Now, what I offered in the role back then was that I was an experienced team leader who was now doing the ops lead, and I offered an alternative way to do it. I wasn't militant like ops were, and I wanted to be engaging with the team leaders and the centre manager rather than authoritarian. And my method worked. I got some really good outcomes. I was always like that as a team leader as well. Never an authoritarian, wanting people to come along with the journey with me. And that's what Lloyd taught me, right? And it worked. I won awards as a team leader. I remember once I went down to the Rugby League Grand Final in Sydney. They shouted me and my ex a weekend away. It was incredible. Free flights, free accommodation. We stayed at Darling Harbour, went to the Rugby League Grand Final. Incredible. I won that as a team leader, you know. So I was very, very successful in my time at Telstra. And I weighed it all up and I'm thinking, no, I don't want a redundancy. I want to keep going. My career's going well and all that. But also on the side, I've got all these conspiracies going on. Danik's gone. Danik no longer works there. Those days are now well and truly over. And it was literally one thing after another. Like, this is the period where I started learning about Freemasonry and the hand signs and all that sort of stuff. And one by one, on the side, my life is falling apart. Everything that I believed in, everything that I thought was true, was a lie. And I felt my whole life was falling apart. And looking back, I was waking up in the dark, one of the most terrifying experiences you could ever go through. And I see people like that to this day who are awake in the dark, refuse Christ, refuse the answer, and they're just angry and they're miserable, right? I see it everywhere. Online. Not so much, I see it in person as well. They just see all the lies, but they've just got no answer, right? And the answer is to be the light bearer. It's not hitting your knees and being entertained and all the rest of it and just focusing on conspiracies and then saying Jesus is the answer and he's going to save me from all the evil. No, it's to be the light bearer. We no longer serve this life. We now serve the Lord Jesus Christ. But this is not how I was talking back in those days, right? I still hated God. Absolutely hated God. And I was absolutely rancid on Twitter. I was what they call too much antiseptic kills germs. And that's how I ended up getting booted off Twitter, for too much antiseptic kills germs, right? But, so I didn't like this, that had come down between me and her. I didn't like it, and it stunk. And a part of me could not bear them looking at me and going, you're it, Brett, you're out. We're going to choose this woman over you. I wouldn't have been able to handle that. I couldn't. And there was a part of me that thought they're going to pick her because she's better at the job. She was. She was a lot more experienced, and she was very, very authoritarian and very, very old school, but got the job done. This lady was a pro, and she'd been doing it for years, and I thought there is no way in the world they're going to pick me over her. It all comes down to this, right? And I thought to myself, well, what I can do is control the decision. There's always life after Telstra, right? And you go, well, the redundancies, And I looked into it. I rung HR just privately, and I'm like, how much is the redundancy? What am I looking at? And they bowed it all up. They took more. I had a whole heap of annual leave at the time. I had a whole heap of long service leave. Never touched my long service leave, and 10 years service. And they gave me the final figure. And a lot of it wasn't. The redundancies aren't taxable. Annual leave and long service is, but the redundancy is not taxable. So that was a big deal as well. And I weighed up the figure and I thought, oh boy, that's a lot of money. And I reckon I can get a job straight away if I left. And I'm thinking, I look around and I'm thinking, a lot of my old friends have left because they all got made redundant. A lot of the old crew are gone. My best friend back in the time, we'd already fallen out, and he now lived full-time in Manila. The guy that made me popular back in 2012. So this is sort of mid-2017 now. I'm walking to work one day. It was a rainy morning. I stood under William Jolly Bridge. The same place, the same circumstance. It was raining and it was winter. It was like July, middle of winter. And I stood under the William Jolly Bridge and I said, I'm doing it. I'm taking the redundancy. And then I went to work. I hit up Troy. He said, yep, come and see me. I went up and I said, I'm taking the redundancy. And he said, you're joking. And I said, no. He said, you sure? I said, yep, get it in motion. And he said, all right. And I took the redundancy. And I got paid out. And I had the most wonderful farewell from Telstra. And I decided just to take a month off and not worry about finding a job or anything like that. And I spent this is before. No, I got straight to it. That's right. I got straight to it. And then from there, I got a job at WorkCover. So WorkCover's like the main insurance company for Queensland. And they're like the government insurer. Workplace. And it was a cushy job, man. But the problem was that this job, they were just stuck in this 1960s time warp. And everything was stuffy, and there was dress regulations and very, very strict guidelines on how to behave and all that. And I'm thinking, this environment's just suffocating. I can't handle it here. And I wasn't a team leader anymore. I was just an agent again. When I say just an agent, because I'm back down there again. But good money. I was pulling like 60,000 a year. It wasn't that far short of Telstra. I was pulling good money, But this and that happened where I was humiliated in front of it, front of the whole training group, where I email the lady is frustrated about an interaction we're having, and that email was just displayed to the whole class. And I was an outcast in the class for whatever reason. I remember one Friday afternoon they all went to drinks and they didn't invite me. And I'm like, I'm not accepted here in this group. I've been made an idiot of with the email. It's a really, really stuffy work environment. I'm on the floor now, and my team leader's a good guy, and I'm like, I don't like this. I've got no future here. I can't see myself working here in another 2 years. So I pulled the pin. I'd only been working there for about 2 months, and I pulled the pin. And I remember my team leader's name was Chris, nice guy, and I said to him, "I'm going to leave, mate." And he said, "What, for the day?" I said, "No, for good." And he said, "Really?" I said, "Yeah." And he's like, "Why?" I said, "I reckon you know." And he said, "Yeah." He said, "It's just not for you, is it?" I said, "No." I said, "I just don't belong here, mate." I said, I'm just a guy from the New South Wales Central Coast. I'm a real knockabout. I said, I can be a bit of an oddball sense of humour, and I love making people laugh. I said, "It's like it's illegal to laugh here, you know." He said, "No, I get it." He said, "It's a very professional environment." I said, "Yeah, it's just too stuffy, you know." He said, "I get it." And I remember saying to him, I said, "Thank you so much, Chris." I said, you're a good man. You're a good man, and I'm all the better for meeting you." And he says, "Right back at you, Brett." He said, "I just wish it could have been different, you know." So I left. My world's fallen apart, you know. Yeah, it was by my own will that I left, but I couldn't. I just couldn't do it. And left, right, and centre, the conspiracies are coming in. Telstra's behind me, but I've got the redundancy, you know. Anyway, I then decide that I need time out. I just need time out. So I hired a car. So I didn't have a car because my car got stolen in 2014. I never replaced it. I hired a car, and it was a sweet ride. It was this hotted up Commodore. They upgraded me. It was a sweet ride. And cars were very, very cheap to hire up in Brisbane. Like, you're looking like a couple of $100 a week to hire a car, you know. And I had this redundancy. So I went and spent a week up at Agnes Water in a place called 1776, and it was the most incredible week, you know. And that was the week that I decided to delete Facebook. That's another story in itself, why I deleted Facebook. But I've never looked back at that decision either, to delete Facebook. And I had a wonderful, wonderful week up there, up at Agnes Water. It was a real soul-searching week. And it was funny the way it worked out, because I'd already got the interview. I'd gotten the job, my next job, that's right. I'd already gotten the next job at Australia Post. Now, this is where Danik worked. Danik worked at Australia Post, right? He was a centre manager there. And I got the job. I got the job at Australia, applied for it, and I got the job. A lot less money. Like, this is 50 grand a year, and it's just base level, entry level. You got to start again. And what I wanted to do was work my way up through the business. I knew how to navigate at the businesses because of Telstra and all that. Very, very similar environment to Telstra when I got there, and I'm like, yeah, this is where I want to go, right? Anyway, and it was very, very casual there. Just casual clothes every day, t-shirt and shorts. I liked what I saw when I viewed it. But anyway, I got the job, but it was pending a medical. Now, a part of the medical was a drug and alcohol test. Now, that presented a problem for me, because I've got a week or so before that drug test. It was a week ahead, and I was going to fail this drug test, right? Anyway, I didn't know what I was going to do, because I'm researching pot and all that, and pot stays in your system for months, you know. And I'm thinking, I don't even know how I can pass this, you know. I remember at one point I had urine in my freezer. It was just, things were that chronic with me, you know. But anyway, I, like, you know what I mean, just freezing it so I can get it out. So it's, yeah, but no, it's, anyway, that's where I was at. But I had a week before this drug and alcohol test. So I thought, well, I can't drink. So I went up to Agnes Water for the week. And it ended up being great. It was really, really good for me. I'm just not drinking. I just didn't drink for a week. And back then, that was absolutely foreign concept to me, you know. But anyway, it turns out I went and had the medical. It wasn't like necessarily a drug and alcohol test. It was more like a medical. And the lady said, some people think that this is also a drug and alcohol test. She said, it's not that. She said, it's just a basic medical. It's just your She said, you'll see how simple it is, you know. And it was just, you know, bending up and down, and, you know, a 70-year-old woman would have been able to pass this test, you know. A 70-year-old man would have been able, and I passed the test, and I got the job. Now, the trouble is, when I got the job, from the outset, I had a team leader, his name was Dan, and he had red hair, and this man was fiery, and he was just gunning for me. He hated me, and that man never gave me a chance. Never, ever gave me a chance. I'm thinking to myself, what am I going to do? So I asked Danik. I didn't want to involve Danik, but I'm like, mate, I don't know what to do. And he said, I'm not surprised. He said, when I saw that they'd put you with him, I thought, this isn't going to work. This isn't going to work, you know. And now that you're here asking me this, he said, I'm not surprised. He said, look, the general manager's name is so-and-so. I advise that you send her an email. Bypass the centre manager, get it out of the centre, and just, she's good. I've got a good relationship with her. He said, but don't mention my name. He said, I was never involved. That's all right. Anyway, I'm going to be confident about this because I know Danny left. He left Australia Post. That's all in the past. Anyway, after I did. Anyway, I hit up this lady, and she was great. And I really felt as though I had this lady's ear and a trust. She was saying things to me like, Brett, I'm really, really glad you've come to me because we've had other complaints about Dan. And she said, we've got him on a performance plan, and this really adds more weight, and it gives us more options as to what we're going to do with him. Very, very difficult to dismiss team leaders at these businesses, right? Anyway, and I got her trust. I remember she was in Melbourne, and she actually come up one day. She come up for just general business, and she actually made time to see me. And I was flattered, you know. And I got to meet this lady in person, and I thought, this is great. I can really trust this woman, right? In any case, my last day of probation after 3 months, my last day, so today's the day where I find out if I pass probation or not. And I was 50-50 because of my relationship with Dan. This man was goading me. I remember one day I'm walking into the kitchen, the public kitchen area, the lunchroom, for all the staff. I'm walking in and he's walking out. It might have been the other way around. Anyway, he just looked at me and he's like, just this smirk on his face, you know. And I'm pretty pissed off this day because of like things that he did to me. Unprofessional on call obs. I'd offer customers just something as a resolution that everybody did, and then he'd come over and he'd say, no, Brett, you can't give this person that, and then I'd have to reverse it, and then this person who was distraught 5 minutes ago, and I went, will this appease you? And they're like, great, you know, it's simple gesture, thank you, I just want to be heard, you know. And it makes it go away. I can get off the call and get to another call, and he comes up to me and he's like, no, this woman's not having a free bag. And now I have to go back to and this is what he was like. You know, he didn't do it to anyone else, he just did it to me. This man detested me, right? In any case, the same day, we're passing the lunchroom, and he just looks at me with this smirk and he goes, how you going, Brett? You having a good day? Keeping it together? And I just said to him, you'll keep there. I was hauled into an office after that, and I was given a written warning. This is what it was like the whole time through, right? You'll keep there. That's all I said. And I got a written warning. Anyway, the day of probation come about, and I had a meeting in my calendar for 11:30, and I'm like, I know what this is. Anyway, I go on the meeting, and this is now 2017. No, it's actually 18 now. Yeah, this would be February 2018 now. And I got the job over my birthday, 17. Yeah, so I got the job not long after Telstra. Like, we're only like barely 6 months after I left Telstra, you know. This is like February of 2018. And they call me into an office, and there's heaps of them there. Heaps and heaps of them there. And this woman, the area manager, she's on this great big TV from Melbourne, right? Anyway, she's just knifed me in the back. She's like, we're going to put you off now, Brett, where you're failing probation. And she says, it's due to inappropriate comments in the workplace. And I said, well, this is the first I've heard of it. And they said, it doesn't matter. You're in probation. You just have to accept it. You're in probation. You've got no backup. You have to leave, you know. And I'm like, so who made the comments? Were it not liberty to say? And I was escorted out of there, you know, as though I was going to cause some sort of problems. If we tell you who it is, we're worried about that person's safety. I said, really? I said, you think that? I'm just curious. Who made it? What I now know, what happened was so I'm waking up, right? I'm waking up at this time. And at the time, I'm going through the Steinbergskis and their heinous crimes, right? And I'm angry. I'm really, really aggro about this. And I'm still quite away from finding Christ. I'm awake in the dark and I'm all by myself, right? My life is falling apart here. And I have lost Telstra. The work cover job didn't work out. And now I've got a team leader who's gunning for me at Australia Post. And all of these conspiracies are coming in. All my friends now are dropping off because my social media posts have deteriorated just about conspiracies. Nobody wants to know me. I'm completely on my own. I'm now a leper in Brisbane, right? I'm now on my own and I've got hardly any friends left. A couple of friends stood fat till the end, and to this day I'm appreciative and thankful for them. Two that stands out is a girl by the name of Jodie and a fella by the name of Dave. Anyway, I leave Australia Post. I got put on. Yeah, that's right. The how it happened, and just while I've got it in my mind as well, during my time at Australia Post, so over the Christmas period of 2017, so 7 years ago, I went out to my favourite bar. It's called Sporty's Bar up in Brisbane. It's a gay bar, and I used to love going there. And it was just a pub on a Friday, Saturday night. It was terrific. But because I'm learning about the Steinbergskis and their heinous crimes, I'm now falling in love with King Charles. And as you do, all the people that are into that lie, know that lie, they instantly gravitate to King Charles, right? Because he's the one person, the one world leader for me to this day, who spoke a lot of sense. Like, I love listening to him. To this day, I love listening to him. But I'm not deluded. I know he's a Freemason, and I know he's not the answer. But I look at that social, what's it called? His system, what was it? Social, I can't think of the word. But he's National Socialism. To me, that looks like, I hate government. Like, I'm an anarchist to the core. Anarchy just means not to be ruled. But if there has to be a government system, I love that National Socialism, right? But but anyway, back then I didn't know he was a Freemason, right? And I was at that club one night and I'm on ecstasy and I'm drinking beer and all that, and my life is falling apart and I'm just talking about King Charles, you know. I remember that night there was this guy from Melbourne who was really, really nice looking young man, and he's tuning me. This bloke's digging me, right? But I dropped King Charles's name and he just ran a mile. That was the third and final time I was arrested, and I was arrested for public nuisance, which was absolutely humiliating to be charged with that, loaded up in the back of a paddy wagon. And I remember there was this bar staff there, this nice young guy with a beautiful smile, and we used to flirt. And I didn't remember what happened. One moment I'm talking to this guy from Melbourne, and then the next minute I'm getting loaded into back of a paddy wagon. No recollection. It's just my understanding that I was just talking conspiracies and just making an ass of myself. And I remember that bar staff was there, that guy, young fella that flirted together. And I looked at him, and this is when I come to. I remember this as clear as day. I looked at him and I went, "Oh, not you too." And he just looked at me and he went, and they closed the door. And I got locked up again. And then 2 months after that, I got fired from Australia Post on the day of probation. At this point, I'm like, I don't have another job in me. I just don't. And I'm like, okay, what am I going to do? What am I going to do? What am I going to do? And I had this, like, I know what I'm going to do. I'm going to start drinking and smoking a lot of weed. And I found myself a pot dealer, which was terrific. And it started off as like a half every week, but it quickly degenerated into a full every week. So I was spending like $300 on pot every week. And I was drinking an enormous amount of alcohol within walking distance of a bottle. I used to have this little walk behind trolley thing. In such good with the staff down at the bottle, they used to let me take my little trolley into the cool room. I used to load it up and walk back up to my apartment. It was a cool gig, right? And I'm like, I don't want to work. I'm paying $350 a week in rent on this apartment. It had to be a 12-month lease. And I'm still 4 months away from that lease ending at this point, right? I'm a long, long way from that lease ending, $350 a week. And I'm like, I can't work again. All I want to do is drink. And I remember I was drinking half a carton of beer in the morning, and then I'd go down for a swim in the pool at the resort that I was staying at, and then I'd just smoke 10, 12 joints at night. And that was me every day. And then I'd wake up to a great big Bailey's cream sort of coffee thing in the morning, and then I'd do it all again. I don't know how I managed gym back then, but I still managed to go to the gym, walking into the gym a few days a week to do that, and I never lost strength, never lost my gains at all, but I still managed to maintain it all, And I'm like, what am I going to do? I can't just keep doing this, And I remember I'm sitting on the lounge one night, and I'm like drunk and stoned and watching stupid TV shows, which back then were just unreal to watch, A big show that had a massive impact on me was that one called The Leftovers. But that's when I think this really started, back in 2014 when I first watched that show. An amazing show that had just an amazing impact on me. Anyway, I'm sitting there in my lounge one night, and it just hit me. Just this feeling hit me where I just said, what are you doing here, Brett? It's time to go home. Everything's gone. What are you staying in Brisbane for? It's time to go home. So what I did, I woke up the next day and I hit up the property manager of my place, and she was an absolute bitch to the end. Made me pay rent right to the end, and 2 weeks from the end she finally finds a tenant. She took me to court because of these curtains. She refused my bond because of these curtains. End up taking her to the tribunal and winning. And she put me through hell, that woman. And cost me thousands of dollars. But anyway, I decided I'm going home. So I hit her up and get that in motion. And then I thought, all right, I'm coming back down to the coast for a week. So I did, arranged it with Mum. So I stayed down at Mum's for the week, spent some time with my brother, spent some nights over there as well, and just sort of got away, And then I come back home. I ordered just interstate removalists who were terrific. I've still got, I've still got some stuff. I think is it on here? Yeah, I think I can potentially do this. So you look under this cupboard, and you see that there where it says Wilson, and I think the number is, I don't know. I've left them on. I've still got a few of those stickers left, and that's my stickers for the move, right? that's my stickers. That's my stickers for the move, and they were really, really good to deal with. And moved all my stuff into my parents' place, and I had to come back down, and I moved back down here on May 5. So that was still 6 weeks from the end of the lease, and it was probably about 2 or so months after I lost my job at Australia Post. Now, in that period between me losing the job at Australia Post and coming back to the coast, that would have been 2.5 months. That's when I did alcohol in the morning, and pot at night, and that was punctuated by a swim in the pool. And I managed to have a swim in that pool every day up until the day I left. And because of the Brisbane climate, right? And I was just determined to keep doing it. It was the one thing and going to the gym, they were the two things that I was doing that bear any sort of sanity at the time. So I was at a point now, my whole life has fallen apart. Everything. My whole life has fallen apart. But truth is still my anchor. I ain't stopping. I have lost everything because of this, and I am not stopping. Because of this, is that why the redundancy happened? Yes, because the whole thing was God's grace, right? The whole thing was God's grace to call me home, to be sitting here on this chair now, to finish doing this video, get back in that chair there, and continue on with my current video, right? All these events have led me there. But I then had to stay. I was like 18 when I come home. I'm like 44, going on 45. And pretty much to the day, I spent 1 year with my parents, living at my parents' place. After being a high flyer at Telstra, being appointed as a team leader, an ops lead, Danik, the Circle of Trust, the whole lot, here I am with nothing. My whole life of Brisbane degenerated into nothing, and now I'm back at home living with my parents. I was depressed, I was demoralised, but I just kept on, keeping on with what they call the conspiracies. Truth being my anchor, I ain't stopping. I am absolutely relentless. All I want is the truth. I've lost everything for this, and I ain't stopping. And that applies to this day. I ain't stopping. I lost everything for this, and I ain't stopping. Right? So I'll keep going. So because if people aren't interested in it, they'll just click off, right? So I'll just keep going for as long as the throat will allow, and as long as I feel it's relevant, I'll continue on. So when I come home, I would spend the weekend with my brother and 3 nights with my brother, Friday, Saturday, Sunday night, and then I'd spend the other 4 nights with mum and dad. And I wasn't working, and I was. I'll sort of take you through what happened. Weirdly, very, very strangely, I found a job which was actually exactly the same title as my last job at Telstra. It was like the ops manager lead, right? And it was in Gosford, which is like a half an hour drive from here. And I'm like, I applied for it, and I got that job so easy, it wasn't funny. I remember in the interview, the guy, the boss, his name was Roy, he looked at me and he just basically told me I've got the job. And I'm like, the interview isn't even over yet, you know. I got the job as easy as that. And I got it. I got the job at it was Teletech, right? And it was like as an ops lead. And I'm like, all my dreams have come true at once here. Like, I've got my old Telstra job back, and I am back at home, and I've landed on my feet. The nightmare's over, you know. No, the nightmare was only started. 11 weeks I worked at that place, 11 weeks, and I didn't have an identification number. I didn't have a login. I didn't have a workstation. I didn't even have a computer. They gave me nothing. They gave me not one task to do, and I literally would just sit there day after day, just doing nothing. And it was humiliating. People would ask me, agents would ask me, how are you settling into the new job, Brett? And I'd be like, yeah, it's great. I'm really, really enjoying it. I'm not doing anything. And I'd make it obvious to Roy, what's happening? Yeah, we're working on it. I remember it got that bad, like I'm still drinking and smoking pot at the time. I remember that day, one day, it was like 8 weeks in or something like that. It was a Tuesday afternoon, and I thought, bugger this, I'm jack of this. I got up, I left, I walked up to my car, I went to the beach, and I just sat on the beach smoking pot, and I did that Wednesday, Thursday, and then Friday. And Friday morning my phone rings, it's Roy. I said, "G'day Roy, what's happening?" He said, "Where are you?" I said, "Aren't I there?" And he said, "Don't play games." I said, "Aren't I? Where am I?" He said, "Well, that's the question. Where are you?" I said, "Tell me, Roy, how do you know I'm not there? Did you realise, or did someone tell you? Where are you? When did you realise that I wasn't there, Roy? How long have you been away for? When did you realise I wasn't there?" "All right, Brett, I think it's time that we had a real good chat here. We need to fix this issue." I'm like, "Great." And he took me down. We went down into town and we had a coffee off site. And he said, "This is what we're going to do. We're going to give you these roles and all that, this and that." And I come in the next day, and for about an hour, I thought, well, here we go. I've got something to do. And then I thought, no, this is rubbish. He's just trying to appease me. This is rubbish. I'm still not doing the job I was employed to do. I still don't have a login. I don't have a workstation. I'm lending somebody's computer out of but they need the computer back. I'm sitting at a place where the team leaders use, and I'm in the way, and I'm like, this is a nightmare. So I sent an email out called the Busy Bees Club, and I basically blew it up, and they fired me. But the thing is, when they fired me, they just gave me $4,000. To this day, I've got no idea why. And for 11 weeks, I'm living back at home, not paying rent, and I'm like pulling $1,000 a week. And then I get this $4,000 at the end of it, and I'm like, rock on. I left that place 10 grand better. And I'm like, well, this is all right, and I left. But the pressure's now really growing with my parents, because get a job, Brett, get a job and move out, which you fully understand, and which I was fully down with. At this point, I was absolutely focused on finding a job. And I'm like, that work cover experience to this day remains the most bizarrest experience in my life. It was just bizarre. To this day, I don't get it. And they never gave me anything to do. It was just weird. Like, what have you employed me for? I didn't even exist on the system. Like, they had to pull all these strings just so I could get paid. It was bizarre, right? God's grace. It's all the trial. The further you go down, the better, the more peaceful fruits, the better it is for you. It developed my quality of character. But anyway, this now is around about that ended. I got that job in July. I was back home in May 2018. So we're now sort of getting on a year after I left Telstra, and it's sort of getting on about 2 years after September 2016 when I left the Moonland Zones. Truth is still my anchor, and I'm absolutely relentless about it, and running around trying to wake people up and carrying on like a lunatic, right? Which takes me back to the Australia Post, actually. I forgot the reason why I was fired. You're making inappropriate comments in the workplace, they said. Now, what used to happen, every morning I'd get there about half an hour early, and I'd go outside and have my breakfast. I'd go to gym before work, walk into work, go to gym, and then have my breakfast. Pack my breakfast in my bag and have my breakfast. Have a bowl of breakfast cereal outside on my own time, in my own space, just me and myself. But there was this guy with a name, his name was Christian with a K, and he used to come out every morning and hang out with me. And this guy wanted to hear what I had to say. And I'm like, this is nice. But this man had a all-seeing eye tattoo on his knee, on his leg. I asked him once, I said, "What's that?" He said, "That's the all-seeing eye." And I said, "What do you got that for?" He said, "I don't know." He said, "It's just the tat that I got over the time." Anyway, I'm fully down, as a team leader of Telstra with workplace rules and all that, I'm fully down that if you're on site, it's a workplace conversation. I'm fully down with that. But I'm also fully down that if you come out and invade somebody's private space, that you want to talk to them, and those rules, morally, and as two blokes talking, they then go out the window. You're now forcing yourself onto me, and I'm happy to receive you because I'm under the impression that you want to hear what I've got to say because you've been telling me and you keep coming back, right? Now, me and Christian used to sit next to each other inside as well on the phones. Now, I look back now, the day I got fired, Christian with a K was moved to sit somewhere else. I look back and that Christian, because I know what he was like, I knew his quality of character. I look back now and Christian with a K was going back and repeating everything I said to Dan. And they were the inappropriate comments in the workplace, and that's how they hung me. That's what happened, right? So like, and now I'm sort of coming back now to 2018. I've left Teletech, the most bizarre experience of my life. I'm drinking and smoking enormous amounts of weed. Not so much the drinking. The drinking now has tapered off a lot because I'm living at my mum's place, and the pot's really taken over. Like, I'm smoking a lot of pot. And I remember a younger brother said to me one day, he said, dude, he said, you've always controlled it. He said, but I'm afraid to tell you, you've now crossed the line. It now controls you. And I'm like, rubbish. Denied it, right? I can give up whenever I want. No. He was absolutely, to this day, he knew what was going on, right? Anyway, I had trouble finding a job from there. This is like July. September I left Teletech, and I'm just going out the beach every day and just smoking weed. 10 joints every day, sit on the beach. When those 10 joints are gone, I come home and sort of try and hide it from my parents. Anyway, I got to December and I hit up an employment agency and I got a job, funnily enough, for Australia Post again, packing parcels, packing semi-trailers onto a truck, right? And it was very physical. It was 4 nights a week, and 5 nights a week, 4 hours a day, and $35 an hour. So it was very good, right? $140 a day. Generally, you get a little bit of overtime, so you work on, say, $150 a week. And that's right, it was 4 nights a week. 4 nights a week, it was 2 o'clock to 6 o'clock, might have been 3 o'clock to 7 o'clock at night. And 4 hours, $150 a day, and it was $600 a week, and you taxed down to about $550. And I thought, this is all right, I can sort of sustain easily because I'm not paying rent at mum and dad's, right? Anyway, one thing, I was shunned there. Nobody wanted to talk to me. It was a bizarre environment. And the team leader, his name was Andy, a bald guy, he just didn't want nothing to do with me, but I just kept getting asked back. It was really, really weird. And I'm thinking, why is this guy rejecting me? Why does this always happen? What now, right? But I'm behaving myself, and I'm not talking about conspiracies by now in the workplace. Never did. Only with Christian, right? Because I know it's not professional, and I know it's not. But outside of work, yeah, I'm carrying right on, and I've still got Instagram at this point and carrying right on, right? But now I've been barred from Twitter. I've already been barred from Twitter by this point. So anyway, I remember one night they started accepting me, but it was all based on some sort of joke. Everything was funny, but they started including me. And I went home and I told mum and dad, I said, Andy started being nice to me. And they're like, oh, great, this is really, really good news. Anyway, I find out that what they were doing was that I looked like some guy on a skit, like a TV skit show. And I looked him up, and he's just a deadbeat, this guy, he's an idiot, and they're laughing at me. I thought, this is unbelievable. This is unbelievable. All these people are laughing at me. Absolutely terrific. I remember I was out there one night, we're all out waiting for the truck to arrive, and we're cleaning up the yard, and we're standing in one of those great big clean away blue bin things, right? And we're throwing all this stuff up into this bin. Anyway, there's this guy on a forklift. He never spoke to me once. I'd been working at this place for about 6 weeks, 2 months. This bloke had never spoken to me once. Never made an effort to speak to me, but yet he'd speak to everybody else who does the same job as me. But never me. Just never spoke to me. Didn't want to know, right? And I'm like, okay, whatever. Just get over it, Brett. This is your life. People just don't like you, whatever. But remember one day, he said to me, the first thing he said to me ever, he just looks at me and he says, you need to throw these into that bin properly. And I said, excuse me? And he said, you heard. And I just did it exactly the same way. And he said, you didn't hear me, did you? I said, I heard you loud and clear. He said, if you keep going, and I went right up to him, I said, what are you going to do about it? What are you going to do about it? Right, this guy's furious. And I finished my shift, and I slept on it, and I rang up the recruitment agency, the employment agency, and I said to her, Karina's a name. I said, Karina, I just can't keep doing this. I said, I need time out. And she said, all right, Brett. She says, you're a very good staff member. She said, you ever need another start? She said, just let us know. And I said, thanks. Now, I'm cooked here. I'm cooked. I've had enough. I can't do this anymore. I keep getting these jobs. I keep losing them. I just can't socialise with, I can't associate with people anymore. I'm cooked. I've had enough. I just need a break, you know. Anyway, this is December over Christmas 2018. And I remember my mum said to me around April 2019, my mum said to me, you going to get a job or what? And I said, no. And she said, we can't keep doing this, son. She said, I know. I said, I know, Mum. I know, Mum. She said, something's got to give. I said, all right. So I went around to my brother's that night because it's very, very tense with me and Dad by now. Me and my dad don't get along. And it's very, very tense with Dad by now. And I'm thinking, I've got to get out of here. And I went around to my brother's place and I said, I've got an idea. I said, I want to move into a caravan park. I said, what do you reckon? And I thought everybody would just laugh at me, you know. Trailer trash, you know. And he said, no, man. He said, that's a good idea. He said, if you can get in somewhere. And then the next day, I went into Tuggerah. I remember I went into Tuggerah and I just sat in the car and I just rung all the caravan parks on the Central Coast. And they're all government run and you can't live there except this place. This place. I rung up this place and the guy said, mate, you're in luck. We've got one available. When can you come up? I said, I can come up now. This is the day before Good Friday, 2019. I said, I can come up now. And he showed me that place over there, the old place. And he said, it's yours if you want it. I said, I want it. And we agreed to terms that day and I moved in the very next day. So I moved in on April 19th, 2019, over there. And Mum's like, oh, son, she says, I feel as though you're moving out because of what I said and all that. I said, no, Mum, you're right. Something's got to give here, you know. But anyway, I've got no income coming in at all because I'd quit that other job and I've got no income coming in at all. Anyway, Mum says, what are you going to do about money? And I said, I don't know, Mum. I said, I'm going to have to get some sort of casual work, eh? And she said, yeah. She said, you got to do something. She said, otherwise you're going to send yourself broke. I said, no, I fully understand. And she said, what about sort of thinking about the payments, like the unemployment payments? I said, oh, no, Mum. I said, I can't do that. I said, my morals don't allow it. She said, what are you talking about, your morals? I said, you've given so much to that system. She said, you've paid so much tax. You've paid so much child support. And I said, all right, Mum, this is what I'll do. I said, I'll hit him up and I'll say, look, I don't want money. I just want your help to find a job. She said, all right, my boy. She said, at least that's something. So I ring up. I go over to Centrelink and they say, no, you can't do that. In order for us to help you find a job, you need to be on the payments. And I'm like, all right, I'll go on the payments. So I applied to go on the payments and they approved me going on the payments. When I got the payments, they then decided that I was a thing called a Stream A, which means they felt that I did not need help to find a job and I was on my own for 3 months. And I said, let me get this straight. I said, I've come to you people for help finding a job and not the payments, where I've ended up on the payments and you won't help me find work. Yes, you're a Stream A, unfortunately. And all the rest of it. And I'm like, right. So I'm on the rock and roll. Against my will,
but still looking for a job. When I moved in over there, I watched my favourite game of football for the year, Melbourne and St Kilda at the MCG. I used to love that game, and my life flashed before my eyes. I had 7 cans of Kilkenny to drink, and I drank 4 of them during this day. And that was a miracle for me not to drink all my beer. And my life flashed before my eyes that day, and I've never drunk since. That was the day I gave up alcohol. 6 weeks before that, I'd run out of pot. And when I run out of pot and I couldn't get any more, I became very, very difficult to deal with, difficult to be around. I'd get aggressive and confrontational and incredibly frustrated. I organised a meet. I didn't have any leads here at all. I organised to meet somebody online down at the park, back down there. And the whole thing was a setup. And I did something really, really stupid. I gave them the details, and I drew money out, and I lost that money. The whole thing was just a setup, right? And when I realised it, I was never forget it. It was early March, and it had just rained, and we had that nice, fresh, hot day just post thunderstorm smell. It felt fresh and new and rejuvenated. And I'm sitting there in the car, and I'm going, this is probably the lowest I've ever been in my life. I've never smoked pot since. Never had an inkling to smoke pot. About a month before that, I went camping. Some days I just have to get out of the house because of Dad, and I went camping. So this is sort of a couple of months before Mum made the comment. This is the thing, trying to tell this story, you remember things that happen as you go through. I'm sitting up there and I'm drinking Guinness and Kilkenny, my favourite brews at the time, smoking pot, having a good old time. And I drank my Kilkenny, and I was reading scripture, 2019. Yeah, I've missed the rock, haven't I? Unbelievable. I've missed the rock. Anyway, I'm going to come back to the rock. So by now I'm sort of reading scripture a little bit, just here and there. Haven't started my first full read yet, but I was dabbling in it. No, I've got to go back. I've bombed that. Okay. All right. So I'll go back. This is the problem. So now I'm at Teletech, right? I'm back at the time at Teletech. So it's June 2018. I'm still living at my parents' place. And I'm awake in the dark. This is where there's different narratives, different time frames going on here, right? So we'll go back there. So I haven't had the Australia Post job yet where they were laughing at me and I called them and got put on the dole. This is still before that. I'm still at Teletech, right? Anyway, I am awake in the dark. Truth is my anchor. All I want is the truth. And I started hearing on Twitter and here and there, and Danik's still a voice in my head trying to gravitate me to Christ, right? But I didn't want to know. I wasn't interested. I hated God. I hated the churchianity Christians. Why make me gay? Just you can condemn me to hell. You can bugger off. I don't want to serve anyone like that, right? Anyway, I was awake in the dark, and I was gravitating towards it. And by this time, I was very heavily influenced by Pastor Charles Lawson, right? And I'm sitting at a place. So whether I was meant to be at work or not, I'm not sure. But I'm sitting at a place down at a park, still living at home back then, and I call this place The Rock. The Rock is the day where it all changed, right? So I'm listening to this sermon from Pastor Charles Lawson, not wanting to read scripture at all. My discernment of the truth is listening to Masonic pastors, right? Now, Charles Lawson, who broke my heart, I've done quite a few videos on Charles, about 3 videos, and to this day they get views.
He's a Freemason, but back in these days, I didn't know it, right? But boy, do I know it now. And the day I saw him, I'd do that sun god sign, I almost died, right? Did a video straight away. So like he shared John 18, 36, 37. Jesus answered, my kingdom is not of this world. If my kingdom were of this world, then would my servants fight, that I should not be delivered to the Jews. But now is my kingdom not from hence. Pilate therefore said unto him, art thou a king then? And Jesus answered, thou sayest that I'm a king. To this end was I born. And for this cause I came into the world, that I should bear witness unto the truth. Everyone that is of the truth heareth my voice. So truth became my anchor that day. I'm sitting at the rock, smoking pot, looking out into the lake, lost, confused, dazed, lost everything. Yeah, and there it was. And I thought, no, I love this piece of scripture. And this is my answer. This is what's happening here. So that was the day I found Christ. So that went on during Teletech, during the Australia Post job. And then you come into how I quit weed. And then I'm camping around that same time, about a month before I quit weed. And I'm drinking Kilkenny and Guinness. And I'm smoking weed. And I drink my Kilkenny and it's delicious. I'm drinking Nehemiah 2. Like this too, I'll never forget this moment. So I'm up at camping and you see it's from the heart, right? I can just rattle all this off, the scriptures and all the rest of it. I know I'm a bit disjointed with the story. That was always going to happen. So please forgive me. But as long as I get it all out, that's the main thing. And you see, like Nehemiah 2, John 18, 37, massive pieces of scripture in my life, right? So I'm sitting there drinking and sitting in front of my fire at camping, loving every minute of it, but I'm also reading scripture. It was a bizarre time in my life. So Nehemiah 2, and it came to pass in the month Nisan, in the 20th year of the king, that wine was before him, and I took up the wine and gave it unto the king. Now I had not been before time sad in his presence. And the king said unto me, why art thou countenance sad, seeing thou art not sick? This is nothing else of sorrow of heart. Then I was very sore afraid, and said to the king, let the king live forever. Why should not my countenance be sad, when the city, the place of my father's sepulchres, lieth waste, and the gates thereof are consumed with fire? So I read that, I cannot explain it, but I read that, and for the first time, I started seeing scripture in a whole new light. This was the beginning of my spiritual awakening as it pertains to how I read scripture, how scripture ought to be read, right? And then I sipped my next sip of Kilkenny, and it tasted like horse piss. And the rest of that camping trip, I was forcing that piss down my throat. I wasn't enjoying it at all, but determined to have it, right? So alcohol is playing less and less of a role in my life. I was around at my brother's house one night, just after that. This would be getting into April now, just before I moved in here. And I have given up pot, and my drinking had diminished almost to zero. I'd completely lost the taste, and I'd completely lost the desire to have it, right? I just needed that one last push. And my brother's like, we don't catch up much, me and my brothers. Not at all. Not at all. Well, I don't think we've done it since. I think we've done it twice since we come home. Oh, no, we've done it a few times. But just the three of us catching up, it doesn't happen much, right? In any case, and it's not, we've got good relationships. Like, I love my brothers dearly, and it's just who we are. It's just who our family is, you know. It's just who we are. Anyway, he said to me, my younger brother says to me, he says, come on, have a beer with me, dude. And I said, I really don't want to. I said, I had my weed and I was happy. And no, I didn't have I did have weed. So this must have been in February. Anyway, I had
I said, all right, I'll have the drink. He's insistent. He finished his second one, and I'd taken like a sip out of my first. And he said, you're not enjoying that beer, are you? I said, I tried telling you. I said, I've just lost the taste. I said, I don't want it, Anyway, it was pretty close to being a dead soldier by then. And I said, if you want it, I said, you want to have it now, So he had it. It wasn't yet a dead soldier, but it was getting warm, right? So that was sort of, and then I'm watching the St Kilda Melbourne game the day after I move in over there. And I learned that the president, the CEO of St Kilda, he's like a Steinberg's. I saw the game was rigged. Dermot Brereton was throwing out the 666s at the end of the game. I woke up with a stinking hangover, and I've never drunk since. And to this day, I haven't got the taste for it. And as the days go on and on, more and more, I'm just of the view that I'm a reformed drinker. I'll never drink again. I'll never smoke pot again. And I'll never take any of these chemical drugs ever again either. The Holy Spirit just took them off me, right? And then this is just how it's flowed. Over the period, it's just nothing's changed. I'm still getting the payments. I'm still living here. I'm still doing the videos. The videos started September. I was sitting down at the beach smoking weed. So this is between Teletech and the Australia Post job. I'm still living at home. And I'd been for a long time toying with the idea of doing YouTube. I wanted to do YouTube, but I just always said that I didn't have a unique angle. I didn't have anything new to offer. I didn't know who I was, what my brand would be. And I'm just sitting on the beach one day, and there was these 3 enormous chemtrails that I've never seen the likes of before or since. And I got out my phone and I recorded them. In fact, I'll play that whole video now.
Welcome to the New South Wales coast. It's quite the view, isn't it? All looks nice and flat. So I've been noticing over the last month or so that they've been chemtrailing here like hard. I've never seen it here before, but it's been relentless. Like, check that out. It's insane, isn't it? Like, it starts down there, and it looks like it's got like frog's legs at the bottom there. Like, look how it's morphed, and then it does that thing at the start, and then you come up through it, and it's got all the stuff coming out the side, and a few's gone over me, and when it all starts to break up, it's all like grey and shit, and it's just it doesn't look good. You see it goes off into there. This one's a little bit earlier, and it's just over to the north. But I want to show you this down here, down towards Sydney, where I just turned my phone over there just to show you how wide they go, how far they go. But see, that's solid. That's the horizon. It's pretty well solid all the way down there, just chemtrails. And that'd be Sydney. Like, maybe you could see Sydney. Is that the sky of Sydney? I don't know. But it just got me thinking about all the smog and stuff over the cities. You know, I know there's a lot of people there and stuff, but it's like, this is just solid chemtrails as far as the eye can see. I've been watching them. That one there's been a couple of hours. That one's been there. And that's the one straight over me. I don't know. I don't know what it's going to do to me. I'm not going nowhere. Like, I don't know. But I'm not taking their pills. If I get cancer, I'll probably get cancer. And I'm not taking their pills. I'm not having their bloody chemo. All nice and flat too.
So you can see that was how my YouTube channel was born. I started doing videos. And then after my videos, my channel started out as just me sharing I call it my diary. Just me sharing my walk, waking up. A lot of it I was awake in the dark. The first part, I would have been awake in the dark, maybe. It's hard to remember. No, I think I was always, 2018. So no, this is after The Rock and Pastor Charles Lawson. I started the YouTube channel. So I'm not awake in the dark anymore. I'm finding answers a long way from where I am now, of course, because I have laboured long and hard to get where I am now with, just with my discernment on my relationship with Christ and the quality of the videos, But I remember I was over at the old place And there was a guy who's since got his own way, because that was a truck driver ruckus, which I won't go into now. But he come to me one day and he said, Brett, he said, I want you to do a sit-down study video for me. And he said, I want you to look into the transgression in Genesis 3 as we tie it into Jasher. I've still got the comment, right? And that's how the Bible study videos were formed. I got plenty out of that. From memory, I may have even got some good comments on there. And that's how the longer form videos were formed. And I've learned to love it. And I'm still at a point where I'm cooked and I can't go out and get a job. It's now well and truly my understanding and my view and my testimony that the Holy Spirit doesn't want me to, because he just keeps throwing these challenges out with me with the payments, and I just keep coming through. That's the prayer. This is where I'm at, and I've just got to have faith now, and that's what I do. And then you fast forward to my current predicament, my current plight with the exemptions and all that. And I'll get that phone call tomorrow at 9:45, and I'm quite confident. The guy said to me, the supervisor, that it's all going to go through. And here I sit today, the new creature, serving Christ, doing these videos with a man named Philosopher66, who's asked me to share my testimony. And there it is. And I just grow more and more strong in faith. The discernment now in the scriptures and our reality just gets stronger and stronger. The world just gets darker and darker. I wake up more and more to it. And what I'm seeing with that increased awareness is that it's just getting darker and darker. The stage, the agenda, they just get clearer and clearer. But more importantly, my discernment in the scriptures just waxes mightier and mightier, as does my relationship with the Holy Spirit. And you can see this is as raw as it gets, as genuine as it gets. And that's my 2016 testimony. So anybody that's got anything out of this video, from the bottom of my heart, I do thank you. If you do endure to the end, an extra thank you. I'm sorry it's a bit disjointed with the dates and all that, but I hope and pray that I just got it down right. So thank you. That's it. This is my standalone video of just what happened in 2016. And all the power and all the glory goes to the Lord Jesus Christ, my King. Everybody that hears my voice does the truth, right? Our Saviour. Awoo! Ha ha! Okay.
Life was filled with guns and war, and everyone